During this video, we are going to show you how to create a discussion and to add rubrics to a discussion or how to use rubrics in other activities. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Add Materials. If I wanted to add it into a folder, I would open that folder first. I'm going to click Add Materials and go to Add Discussion. One thing I'd like you to keep in mind is that when you have a discussion, you're going to want to be very clear at the title of it, because as you build your course, you may have multiple discussions and you don't want to have students hunting around for specific discussion. I always like to have my learning targets. So I would add a couple student-friendly learning targets, and then I would put very clear directions. So if I wanted to pop a video in here, I could insert a video through YouTube or something maybe perhaps that I have saved on my Google or OneDrive. I could link an article within here, attach an article, and have that be part of the discussion. So just being very clear with your information on exactly what you want your students to be discussing. And then put the very clear discussion topic in here and be very explicit about what you want them to discuss. So I put my question in, and then I'm going to put some additional guidelines. Use complete sentences. Reply to at least 2 other responses. And then I like to remind my students about some digital citizen guidelines. So I show my students exactly what I want. I also like to make the text a little bigger, just I think it's easier for students to read. And I will bold what I want them to discuss. And I even go as far as to highlight the question. I like to do this because I want to make my students as successful as possible with this discussion question. So I've added all the information here. They can't tell me they didn't see it. If I had the enterprise version, I would record these directions as well so that it can help my students who might be struggling readers or ELL students. I'm going to put a due date on this. Again, if you are using completion rules, you will not be able to, it won't hold the due date because students are self-pacing themselves through this. I'm going to enable grading, and I'm going to make sure I change the point so it's realistic for this activity. And I'm going to add a category. So when I'm in my grade book, I can filter by different categories. I already have one called discussions, but I could create a new grading category if I didn't have the discussion category already created. If I wanted to keep it ungraded, maybe I'm asking for opinions and or just some feedback, I would keep it as ungraded, but I do want to show you the grading feature. The grading period is whatever grade period you're in. We're just going to keep it in Sandbox. And then I have some options here. I can use numeric, or I can create a discussion rubric. I do have one here, but I want to show you quickly how to create one. So I'm going to click on Create New. So I'm going to use a rubric, and I'm going to name it. And you can reuse these rubrics as much as you want. And then you're going to build some categories. I can have additional for areas for grade scales. I can add additional grade criteria. I can add learning objectives, so I could boil down to the New York State Next Gen ELA standards if I wanted to. I'm just going to populate a few of these and then continue on. To the Miracle video, I was able to quickly add these and just to give you an idea. So I can continue to add criteria if I wanted. It pops in the different grading scales and you can edit all of these fields. I'm just going to exit that one out. But you can see here that I can keep building and adding. I can change pointage. I have total points listed over here. And this is created specifically for this discussion question, but it builds my rubrics in my Schoology course so that I can use this rubric over and over. So think about how you're naming them as well. I'm just going to call this discussion rubric. I'm going to create it. It's going to pop it into my scale rubric area, and it automatically defaults to show to students, which I think is very important because they need to know how they're being assessed. And then the learning objectives list the criteria that I added to my rubric. In the options area, I can lock this so students can't respond. I can unpublish. It's automatically defaulted as published. It's automatically defaulted that members can see others' responses before participating. This is what I always change. I want to require my members to post before revealing other responses. So I want to hear from my students. I want their original thought. I don't want them seeing other students' responses before they post their response. So they're going to have to post the response before they can see other students' responses. Now, keep in mind, if you have moderation turned on for discussions, there will be a delay in the thread of the discussions because they have to be approved, and then they can't see other students until their post is approved. So keep that in mind. I also want to note that the total points changed because my rubric was only 8 points. So I'm going to click create. And then I just want to quickly show you in the course options that I have that option to moderate posts. Right now, I don't have it on, but I can enable it and it would turn it on. And then students would have to be approved before their post would show up in the discussion. So just keep that in mind. I also want to show you, if I go to my grade setup and I click on my rubrics, you'll see that that discussion rubric is now in my options and I can use it every single time I create a discussion. I also can copy to another course or save to my resources. So this is a rubric that's created specifically for this course, not my entire Schoology environment. So keep that in mind. If I want to have it in another course, I'd have to copy it to another course or save it to resources and pull it down into that course. I can always go back and edit it as well. You'll see that the delete option is faded out because I have these rubrics actually tied to a discussion. So it's already being in use, so I cannot delete it. And that is it for adding discussions to your Schoology course, as well as tying a rubric to a discussion. And I can use rubrics for any of the other resources or materials within Schoology. So I can use rubrics for assignments. I can use them within assessments. So just keep that in mind with your grading capabilities. Also, you'll see with the discussion, all the details show, as well as the criteria that I'm using for my discussion question. So I just want to show you quickly the student point of view of the discussion. So as a student, this is exactly what I'll see, and I get to see the rubric that the teacher is going to be using to grade my response. And I'm going to type my response, and you'll see with my response, I can use some of the rich text editor. I can upload a file, add a link, or add something from my resources, and I can add a link. So there's some different parameters here that I can use. And I'm going to post this comment. Moderation wasn't turned on, so it's immediately viewable by my teacher and my peers. And then now that I have posted this, I will be able to see and reply to other students' posts. I'm going to quickly go back to the teacher point of view so you can see the grading feature. So I'm back to the teacher point of view and I see that my student has responded. So I'm going to select the grading icon and you'll see that there's a little rubric icon right within here. Once I select this, it will show me the rubric and I can select where the student falls in these parameters. So maybe the student is in between these. I can change this to a 2.5 and it will automatically adjust the rubric total. So keep that in mind. I also can add comments next to each of the criteria. So you have the little thought bubble. And the student will be able to see that. So once I save it, it adds a little check mark and I can see that I know that the student has completed it. And then the student will be able to see my responses and make changes if they want to increase their grade. And then I'd be able to regrade that student. So just keep that in mind. It's super easy. What's great about it is that I can go in and I can add some additional information. So I put a 2.5 so the student knows that they are in between these two and they can add more detail. But what's really great is I can just easily click through these. It automatically calculates the grade and then it's good. And I can add a comment here. And I probably should add more information there, give better feedback, but that's just the idea. So I've added a comment within the rubric and I've added a comment within the discussion. And then once I save that, we're all set to go. I'm going to show you quickly the grade book for the student. So you'll see that this discussion, it shows the grade, it shows the rubric, and then it has the comment that the student can see right here. So please add more detail to increase grade. So the student can go into that discussion, edit it, and get a better grade. So that's it for using discussions, creating discussions, and using rubrics within those discussions.